Hey guys, so as we've been talking about missions, I've been throwing out the word call a lot. And so we're going to focus in on that today and connecting the different kinds of calls because there is different kinds of calls. And so first, how many of you actually still make phone calls and don't just like text or Marco Polo or whatever you guys do with your phones now? I still occasionally make phone calls. And so this is how phone calls work. So you have two phones and you need something very important, and that's called service. If you don't have service, then you don't make a phone call. And so in the calls of the world, there are three different kinds of calls, and they all really work together. And so there's the personal call, which is what is God telling you to do as a person, as an individual? What is God calling the church to do is our collective call. And when I say church, I don't just mean our church. I mean the big C church, all of the church all around the world to do. And when we put those things together, we have what's called the integrated call, which is just a fancy way to say those things woven together. But when there's no service, when there's no connection, then we don't have an integrated call and the church doesn't function how it's supposed to. And so first, we need to know what has God called us individually to do. This is super specific for you. What God's called me to do, he hasn't called you to do. And what God's called her to do isn't what he's called you to do. Your call could be full-time ministry, and that's awesome. That's a call that I have on my life, but that's not the only call. Right now, God could be calling you in your schools, on your campus, to reach your friends, and I'm pretty sure that he wants you to reach the people around you. When you get older, a marketplace job, and for those of you who don't know what that is, that's anything that's not full-time ministry. So a chef, a lawyer, a fashion designer, a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, all of those things are marketplace jobs. Or God might be calling you to be a stay-at-home parent, and that's great too. Those are all specific things for you that God could be telling you to do. But what God has told the church to do, remember, the big C church, is the Great Commission. And we've been talking about the Great Commission, and that is to go and make disciples in all nations. And when we say all nations, we don't just mean the individual countries. We mean the different kinds of peoples who speak different languages and have different cultures within those countries. God's desire is that they all hear Jesus and that disciples will be made among them. And so how do we put these two things together? And so I know some of you might be thinking, so I get how full-time ministry, how that would be connecting to making disciples, and even reaching your campus and friends, but how does being a lawyer connect to making disciples? Well, as a lawyer, you can pray, you can give, you can take short-term trips, you can be an advocate. As a stay-at-home parent, you can teach your children to love Jesus. You can teach your children about giving. You can teach your children about praying for the nations. And you can encourage your children to find their own personal call, because just because you're not called to the nations, to go to the nations, your children might be. And an important factor is being able to release your kids to go when God tells them to go. And you can, even the people around you, when people want to go and express a desire to you that God is calling them to go, encourage them. If your best friend feels a call to go, give them all of your support, because they need your support. And so the main thing is we need to be able to connect a line from those jobs, those personal things that God is telling us individually to do, into going into making disciples of all the earth. And it can be done as long as you're making a direct connection to making disciples, then you are living an integrated call in your life. And so when we can draw that line, it's like we have service again. There's a call, you can make the call, the call is clear, it's connected. Your personal and collective things can flow together, and then the integrated call of the church and what God wants the church to do will be accomplished. And when those things are connected, not just for one of us, not for a couple of us, when all of us connect those things and can draw that line, we can go into all the world and make disciples of all nations.